So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the second meeting of the Flea Market Advisor Group. We're really excited to continue learning and talking with you. I'm Christy Wong with Baird and Driscoll Community Planning. We're a consultant to the City of San Jose. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that everyone can listen and view slides in Spanish or English, whatever is appropriate. Adolfo, can you repeat this in Spanish? Or actually, we have the interpreters here still. Luis or Ana, could you just share that a welcome, and we're going to figure out, give people instructions on.
Sí, muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias y bienvenidos. Le damos la bienvenida a la segunda junta al grupo asesor del mercado de pulgas. Les vamos a dar instrucciones, ya vamos a activar el canal de español, donde ustedes van a seleccionar español, donde van a poder escuchar la interpretación. Vanessa la va a abrir dentro de un momento.
Wonderful. So next slide, Vanessa. We have Spanish interpreters here today who are going to be using the interpretation channel on Zoom. So we're going to play a video that explains how to select it. So Vanessa, go ahead.
Tenemos intérpretes aquí que van a estar haciendo la interpretación, así que en este momento vamos a tocar un video para que ustedes puedan ver la manera de cómo deben de elegir y seleccionarlo. Vanessa, adelante.
Bienvenidos a esta reunión. Para acceder a la función de interpretación, haga clic en el icono del globo en la parte inferior de la ventana de Zoom y selecciona el idioma que desea. Para escuchar claramente el audio de interpretación, le recomendamos que también seleccione la opción para silenciar el audio original, que es la opción más baja en el menú después de hacer clic en el icono del globo.
So Victor, can you go ahead and set up the interpretation channel and move Luis and Ana into that?
Víctor, ¿puede proseguir, por favor, a preparar ya el canal de español para que Ana y Luis puedan comenzar a interpretar?
So I now see the globe. So if you would like to use Spanish, please go ahead and move into the interpretation channel. I'll say we did not get any advance requests for Vietnamese interpretation for this meeting. So Victor, can you share a message with any Vietnamese speakers who have joined?
Chào quý vị, chúng tôi không có thông dịch tiếng Việt tối nay. Nếu quý vị muốn một video có âm thanh tiếng Việt sau cuộc họp này, viết tên và email vào cái chat hay cái số phone.
Great. So I'm hoping everyone has moved to the right channel. If you have an issue, please put a message in the chat and we'll see if we can help you. So we also now know how to share multiple presentations at the same time. So can you, Vanessa, next slide? If you, this is the first time we're trying this with a bilingual audience, so I hope you can be patient. If you are on a desktop computer and want to see the if you want to see the slides in Spanish, you don't need to do anything. If you would like to see the slides in English, you have to, we have instructions on the slide about how to find it on a desktop or on a mobile phone. There's view options up at the top, and then you choose which screen you'd like to see. On a mobile phone, the options are screen share to, and then the options will show up below. I'll warn you that when we were testing this out, it took a little while for the English presentation to show up, but if you're patient, it should eventually emerge for you. If it's not, just give it a moment. Put a note in the chat if that's a problem. Next slide. So we wanted to walk through a few of the Zoom features if Zoom is new to you. Here are a few of the features. These are all options at the bottom of your screen, whether you're on a computer or on a mobile device. Please keep yourself muted unless you're called on to speak, but we would love to see your faces if you're willing to turn on your video. You can also see who else is participating in the meeting under participants. And we invite you to use the chat for written feedback or to use the other reaction buttons that are also options. Great, next slide. Can I check, are people seeing the English slides as well?
Christy, mine took a long time, but it finally came up just now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So that was a lot of logistics. Now that we're settled, hopefully, we want to do a quick round of introductions. So first, I want to say thank you to the advisory group members for being here. When I call on you, it would be wonderful if you could turn on your screen and say hello. Erica? Oh, and unmute. All right, Maggie? Are you able to say hello? No, you can't unmute. Okay, I see you. Should Maggie be able to unmute herself?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll just say everyone's names. Oh, Maggie, this is a good
Yes.
test.
Hi.
Okay.
It's Maggie.
Wonderful. Is Olga here?
She's just joined right now.
Okay, I'll come back. Pat Tatar? I know I saw he did join, so I think he's here. Oh, there, he's entering the waiting room. Israel, can you unmute and say hello?
Buenas tardes a todos.
Wonderful. Roberto?
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon to everyone, or good evening.
Jimmy? I see you. Can you unmute and say hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Nice to see you. Alma? Mariana?
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you can hear me. Espero que me escuchen.
Humberto?
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Hola, muy buenas tardes.
Hello. Pat, I see you unmuted.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Isabel?
Hola, buenas tardes. ¿Cómo estás?
Okay, great. We have several city staff here as well, including Nancy Klein, the director of San Jose's Office of Economic Development and Cultural Affairs, and members of both consultant teams. Oh, next slide. Members of both.
Excuse me, Olga is here. So
Hi, Olga. Sorry, I introduced you before you.
Yes, you maybe called my name, but I didn't know how to unmute myself. So I'm here too. So I mute myself. Thank you.
And we have members of both consultant teams. So that's from Baird and Driscoll, my team, and the Estelana Advisors team. They've been working on several studies about and for the flea market. And so those who are going to be presenting will introduce themselves before they speak or be introduced by city staff. So let me turn it over to Nancy for a couple of welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Christy. This is Lori Severino. Before we turn it to Nancy, I just want to double check with the audience here. Do we need to repeat the instructions to get the English slides to show up? Is anyone having trouble seeing those? Just want to make sure. Like Maggie, are you all set? Okay, you're good. Okay, see you ahead. Okay, just wanted to quickly pause. Thank you.
Yeah, for anyone who wants the English slides, they do take a little time, so just be patient. Nancy.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you to the committee. Very grateful that you're here, and we have a great turnout of people from the vendors, from the public that are here with us, and also very grateful for your participation. Just wanted to say that at this meeting, we'll begin to look at the data and information that we want to work together on as a group to start forming our way of thinking about how we move forward. Just to keep in mind, the data is not complete. There will be work that still needs to be done. So this is our joint beginning. And again, wanted to thank you for your participation tonight and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Nancy. So next slide. I just want to give a short overview of what we'll be talking about tonight. So the agenda is broken down into two main sections. First, learning about the market elements and data, and then second, a conversation about the approach to the alternative site assessment. So for each of the two sections, we'll have a presentation about the findings or the approach. We'll then have some time for advisory group questions and discussion, and then some time for public comment. So today, because of the rich content that we have, we're not going to have as much time for public comment. So we're going to have each member of the public will have 2 minutes to provide feedback or pose questions, and you'll have one opportunity per section to speak. We had a lot more flexibility when we met in person last, but we have to limit it a little bit tonight. But we also always welcome input between meetings. So please do not hesitate to contact us by phone or email after the meeting. Next slide. Next slide. So we just want to give a refresher on the group agreements that we settled on at the first advisory group meetings. So first, to step up and step back. If you're someone who talks a lot, hold back a little bit. If you're someone who tends to be quiet, push yourself to speak up. Assume good intent of other speakers. Be respectful. Keep an open mind and be ready to learn. Speak from your own lived experience and remember the perspectives of those who are not in the room that you are also representing, and stay on topic. So we want to focus on tonight's agenda, and if there are other things you want to talk about, please contact us after the meeting. So finally, I will now turn it over to the city to provide some context for tonight's presentations. Adolfo, next slide.
Thank you, Kirsty. Okay, thanks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adolfo Ruelas with the Office of Economic Development. I know a lot of you know me already. So the first slide, we just want to go over, quick overview of the work plan. So in the last meeting, we talked about the various work streams, all feeding into how the city can help the small business operating the Berryessa Flea Market, to find new places to the business once the existing market closes. We want to acknowledge that a top priority for many is establishing a new market for existing vendors that want to co-locate. In case there is not one site, we're looking at additional solutions as well. Can you please go to the next one? To this end, we're working with Estelan advisors to study options. First, we're trying to learn as much as we can about the existing Berryessa market's economic impact. This will help us better tell the story about the market's importance to the community. The data and information will fit into the other ongoing work. The alternative site assessment. So essentially, this was divided in 3 components. The second component will be the alternative site assessment, which will explore whether there are any alternative sites in San Jose that could feasibly be developed with a new market for existing Berryessa vendors. And the third component of these studies is the operations and models that will explore sustainable business models and examples of potential models from other communities that could inform a future market. Can you please go to the next one? Now, we just want to go over some of the, an overview of the meeting agendas that we shared on the first advisory group meeting. As we stated, we have completed the data collection phase and we're currently working on draft reports. We plan to discuss the details of the Stellano advisors' findings in the next meeting. Tonight is about developing a shared language and shared understanding of the factors that we need to consider, the how we're studying options. This meeting will provide a foundation for future discussions when we get into specific sites and opportunities. We wish finding a site and setting up a new market was a simple process with several good options and a clear path. But real estate development does not work that way, unfortunately, and there are many factors to consider. We want to be clear, setting up a new market will take multiple years. If we are able to make it work on the Berryessa site or somewhere else, there will be a need to find interim solutions, places where businesses can operate until the new market is up and running. We also want to recognize that the ideal scenario of keeping up every single small business together in one place is going to be challenging to achieve. Our aim, however, is to help find viable solutions for many vendors as possible. This is why we are pursuing a range of solutions. And we go to the next one, please. In addition to exploring alternative sites, here are some other types of opportunities that we're thinking about. One of them will be joining forces with projects underway, working with potential partners to bring Berryessa vendors, matching businesses with vacant storefronts or existing markets, expanding online sales or e-commerce, supporting career moves through job training programs. These are all the things that we're researching and will bring to you for discussion and consideration in the coming months and meetings. It's ultimately going to be up to the advisory group to decide what's best for you and what opportunities you want to pursue. Let me correct that. It will be to the vendors and the advisory group to decide which option will be more feasible. The city, however, is working to support and empower vendors, not standing in anyone's way of finding other partners or options. Our efforts are meant to complement the efforts of each one of you and the BFEA in finding workable solutions. With all this in mind, we're excited about the collaborative effort underway, and we are pleased to introduce the Stellano Advisors team. One of the team members, Dina Belzer. Dina is the founder and president of Strategic Economics, who has been working with us on the economic and operational research to support our next steps for the market. Dina has more than 30 years of experience working on economic and real estate issues in the Bay Area and nationwide. Dina helps government, community groups, nonprofits, and real estate developers figure out how to support their economic development goals. And Dina has also a long history of working in San Jose, and we're happy to have her with us in this project. With that being said, Dina, I'll pass you the microphone.
But very quickly, sorry. No. Very quickly, can we pause and let Victor switch the interpreters in the interpretation channel?
Absolutely.
And could you please advance the slide? Thank you. Let me know when we're ready.
I think they're ready.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Adolfo, for that introduction. And I want to say to everybody here in the meeting how excited I am to be with you. Some of you may remember that I was with you back last fall in, I think, October, when you had a vendors meeting at the library, and I was came away from that meeting very inspired by the work that you all are doing, and further inspired by all the work that we've continued to do around the market. Tonight, we have 2 learning objectives for you that are going to be broken into 2 presentations. I'll be presenting the first segment, which is to share with you a high-level summary of some of the data to help us describe and define the market, and to establish an understanding of the key elements that make for a functioning market. So this is really about the people that are involved and the facility that's involved. And then my colleague and very talented developer and retail analyst, David Greensfelder, will talk to us about how we're identifying potential sites and a new market for a new way to assess their feasibility. We will be also looking into some of the cost considerations related to the market, which we'll be getting back to you on later. So with that, next slide. Thank you. So we're going to dive in now and start by talking about the fact that the markets are made up basically of 2 elements. One are the people. These are the business owners, which are the vendors. Of course, the vendors would not exist without their customers. But we also have the people who operate the market, who are responsible for running it, and their employees. And finally, we have the property owner. And then the second feature of the market that we want to talk about is its location and the physical elements that make up the market. So next slide. Great. Thank you. And next slide. Now, let's dive in by talking first about the business owners, the vendors. We have done our research through surveys, observation, and other sources that we found that the market has a profound impact on the cultural and economic life of the vendors and the customers. We're working on a lot of data and information about this, but some of our key findings we'll be showing to you tonight. One big takeaway is that the market provides a lot of jobs. If you add up the total number of people who work at the market, including the vendors and the people who work for the market operator, that would make the market itself one of San Jose's top 50 employers as measured by number of workers. And it's also one of the densest concentrations of small businesses in San Jose, if not in the Bay Area region. There are at least 460 businesses that operate. All this number does go up and down over time. Each business owner or vendor has about 2.5 workers. So again, more than 1,000 people work at the market. When all counted together, along with the operator's employee, again, the market would be one of the top vendors. So, okay, so next slide. Most of the businesses at the market are long-term. Our survey shows that there is a stable long-term business model for the vendors. Family is also a very important part of the model, with most businesses having other family members work with them or for them. Business owners are also hardworking, very entrepreneurial, with many broadening their businesses into other locations, such as online or stores or other markets. So again, we have more detailed information about all of these things, which we'll be sharing with you all over time. Next slide, please. The product breakdown is a key differentiator for the Berryessa market from other kinds of markets. Most of the businesses here sell new merchandise as opposed to selling used goods. And then there is quite a diversity of products. So this really supports the idea that customers want to come back again and again. It's also important to notice that many operators operate more than one stall or more than one business. So what this shows is the market also provides the opportunity for business to expand or contract or get smaller as the vendor needs. Next slide, please. While we are still working on getting specific information about how much vendor households earn, what we've learned so far is about 3/4 of the vendors earn enough from their flea market businesses to have this be their only job. That is really extraordinary. Many vendors have used their business income as well to purchase a home or to put family members through school. So this is an important part of the economic and cultural impact of the market. Next slide, please. Finally, in terms of understanding the cultural benefits the market has to offer, you can look at these. We'll talk about these again in more detail in the report, but these are some of the highlights. First of all, it's a very inexpensive way for businesses to start without a lot of money of operating capital. So the flea market makes it very easy for one to start a business. Second, these very small businesses, the people who operate, our vendors at the market, are also called micro businesses. And these kinds of businesses tend to generate more wealth and pass that wealth on to their family members than somebody who has the similar income but does not own their own business. So business ownership alone makes a huge impact on family prosperity. Then we also know that the market creates a sense of cultural connection and traditions, making a link for people who have come to this country from other countries, also providing cultural goods. And finally, the market creates a unique sense of place and scale. So the market is much bigger than any of the other similar markets in our region. So it's really a unique kind of place. So again, we'll be talking much more about these cultural benefits in upcoming work. Next slide, please. So yes, it is important to, we just wanted to share some of these data points with you tonight, but it's important for you to know that we're still working on other data. So here is a list of some of the other things we're working on. Again, sales and income, revenue, and then the other, the expense of market operations and the operations models are coming, and then the cultural impacts, all very important. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about the market customers, the other side of the equation for the businesses. We looked at the where customers come from. And it's important to note that the Berryessa market draws from a 4-county region: Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco, and Alameda. There are a few customers who drive from much further away, but the major percentage of the market's customer base comes just from these 4 counties pictured in the map on this slide. Next slide, please.
Can I interrupt and just ask you to talk a little more slowly for the benefit of the interpreters, please?
More slowly. Okay, yes. We used anonymous cell phone data to understand where the customers are coming from and when they are coming to the market. We compared the market, which is shown in this graph in the red line, with customer foot traffic going to the Capital Flea Market, which is the other major flea market in San Jose. Going back to 2017, you can see that foot traffic goes up and down. It varies quite a bit. The Berryessa market has more foot traffic than the Capital Flea Market, but foot traffic completely dropped, of course, when COVID hit, and then started to go back up again and spiked. It went really high in 2021 and in the first part of 2022. We checked the data to be sure that this could not be explained by the opening of the BART station, and we do not think that it explains this big spike in visitor traffic, but rather that in 2021 and 22, people had what we're calling cabin fever. They wanted to get out of the house and go somewhere, so they were going to the flea market because it was outside, family friendly, and a good place to be. However, in late 2022 and through 2023, which is not covered in this graph, we had, as you may all remember, terrible rainstorms, and that has really affected customer foot traffic this year. Next slide, please. We also spoke to dozens of customers and did a survey exercise on a Saturday at the market. And the following slides will show you some of what we learned from these customers. Next slide. First, we learned that the vast majority of customers arrive by car. Very few people ride transit. So this shows how important parking and access to the market are. Second, we found that customers are incredibly loyal, like their vendors. Many have been longtime visitors. We learned also that customers are concerned about price, and they come to the market because they find good deals there. But fourth, customers also look for many items to purchase, including food and clothing. And these are very important, both because they are cultural, but also because the pricing is good. Next slide, please. Let's see. Also, what else do customers love about the market? Customers come because they want a place to be together with friends and family and other people who might remind them of a home country. Customers really like being outside, even though bad weather does impact customer traffic. Customers really appreciate that business owners share their language and their culture. And finally, the customers told us while they like the music and the events, they are not necessarily an absolute must-have for the customers. So now we're going to move on to talk about the next piece of our equation, which is the market operator. The market operator is also, in the case of the Berryessa Flea Market, it's actually a family that owns the land. This is not always the case. It's not even usually the case with markets. It's one of the things that makes Berryessa unusual. This slide shows some of the basic duties that you would expect from any market operator. They manage the leases, they keep the facilities clean, they manage the parking. These are all important to keep in mind. We are also using this kind of information to help us understand operating markets for the future, for a future market, if we can do that. These are just the basics, but let us know if you think anything is missing in terms of operations. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through these last few slides about the market facility and location. You all are familiar with where the market is located, but what makes it well located? Well, for one thing, it's very accessible from major freeways, from 680, from US 101, and from I-880. So all of people coming from those 4 counties that make up the customer base can get there relatively easily. The other thing is that it is central to a very wide population. There are almost 600,000 people who live within 5 miles, 1.4 million people who live with 10 miles. So that's a very large customer base who lives within a short drive. Next slide. Now let's talk about the facility, which is the actual structure and space of the market, plus the amenities that are available at the market. As we've said, the flea market itself is very large. There are over 800 stalls, although not all those stalls are occupied right now. And then there are also over 3,000 parking spaces. Very important for a car-oriented region like ours, and where most of the customers come to the market by car. The market also has significant permanent and semi-permanent structures, which allows the vendors to store their goods on the market. So they actually operate like little individual business spaces. This is not true for the majority of markets, where the vendors put out tables and pop-up coverings, which they take down at the end of the selling period every day or every week. And they have to move all their goods in and out every time the market closes. Next slide, please. Other ways that the Berryessa market is unique is that it is its size and scale. We think that there's tremendous critical mass, and that the vendors all draw more people to other people's stalls, right? We think that this is one of the largest operating markets that operates on a weekly basis. There are bigger markets in Southern California, but they're only open once a month, not every week for multiple days. So this is an important point about the Berryessa Flea Market. It also has the playgrounds. It has very clean functioning restrooms, and there is entertainment. The market is also its own thing. It does not share space like the Capitol Flea Market, which is actually in the parking lot of a drive-in movie theater. And so all of this adds to a sense of a city within a city for customers to explore and to create a unique experience, unlike any other in the region. So with that, we are going to stop and turn this over for questions and discussions. Josh, I believe you are up.
That's me. Great. Thank you. That was really interesting. I want to, before we begin, remind everyone of the agreements. So mostly be respectful, step up, step back. But generally we agree, everyone agreed to those in the beginning. So please keep them in mind. You are welcome to ask your question in English or Spanish, or we'll translate it both ways, whichever way. And then if you're on a phone, you should press *6. If you're muted, you should press *6 to mute or unmute, or you can also *9 to raise or lower your hand. Again, we're gonna limit questions at this point just for advisory group members. But I just want to start by asking, does it feel right? Like, does this, lots of research, lots of thought went into this. Does it feel true to you? Or there are parts that don't, that are partially right or not right? Yeah, Roberto.
Yeah, hey everyone, this is Roberto. Obviously a lot of information to absorb all at once, right? Not sure yet whether I feel it's right or wrong, more along the lines of like the collection of the information from vendors, how that was taken, and how that was like the process in which you guys obtained all that information.
Yeah, so what was the data collection process?
Yeah.
Thank you, Roberto, for that question. We used a multi-phase process for collecting the information. We worked with the Vendors Association to circulate our questionnaire to vendors, primarily online in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We also did a census. We went to the market and counted every stall and marked down how many stalls were occupied and how many were vacant and appeared not to have a tenant. Some of the stalls did appear to have a business, but we were there on a rainy day, so perhaps people did not come out. So those are the two. We also got some information, limited information from the operator.
Dina, can I add on to that
Yes.
for just a sec? And hi, everybody. It's Nathan Donato Weinstein here. I work with Adolfo, and I've been helping Dina and her team with some of this work as well. I would just add on that there's, we did do the on-site tabling to help kind of push out our paper survey. We also did the customer kind of survey day on a Saturday. And then there's a kind of using other means, we worked with a data provider to obtain some anonymous cell phone device information. And we've also been working with our sales tax consultant to try to understand some of the sales tax trends and what that can tell us about the market. That piece takes a little more analysis, and we're kind of diving more into that, and we think we'll have some more information to share on that soon.
Great, and I assume that the final report or even the draft report will have really good documentation about the methodology. So I want to make sure.
Good point, Josh. And this is not the report. This is sort of an update on some of the really cool, what we think is cool stuff that we've been learning. Chris Lepe mentioned in the chat, we have, thank you, Chris, appreciate it. So we also have hosted a number of focus group discussions to try to, beyond just like a survey, have real conversations with people about kind of their experiences as business owners at the market and how, that has changed over time and what their experiences have been.
I would add that we also, thank you, you're triggering my memory. We also did speak to several people in San Jose who are knowledgeable about the market, even though they're not vendors. We also did a academic literature review. There's a lot that's been written about markets in general, micro vendors, etc. You don't see a lot of that information in this presentation, but that's what will be coming forward. And then we are also in the process of talking to other markets.
Great. And we put a couple of sample questions in the chat, so those are optional questions if it's helpful. I'm going to try and just make sure we keep moving. And a reminder, we're going to do the advisory group people first, and then we'll open it to the general public. Humberto. Go ahead.
Hola.
Hola.
Hola, buenas tardes. Soy Humberto. ¿Sí me escucha?
Hi everyone, I'm going to be translating for Humberto. Humberto is just introducing himself.
Mi pregunta es esta. Todo está bien, la investigación, y gracias por haber investigado todo eso, el efecto que va a ocasionar para nuestra comunidad, para nuestros hermanos vendedores, pero la pregunta es esta. Esa información se la van a pasar a la ciudad, al alcalde, para que él se dé cuenta el impacto de lo que va a ocasionar al cerrar la purga, porque esta investigación está enfocando cuántos vendedores, cuántos trabajadores tiene uno, cuánto es la economía. Y si esa información se la van a dar a la ciudad, al alcalde, al principal que es. Es todo, gracias y muy amable.
Humberto, solo
Sí.
para clarificar. Entonces lo que usted está preguntando es que si este reporte se le va a enviar también a la ciudad y al alcalde.
Sí.
Ok.
Porque le vuelvo a repetir, es como ellos, las altas autoridades de allá se van a dar cuenta cómo nos va a afectar. ¿Sí me entienden? ¿Sí me explico?
Claro. So Humberto mentioned that he's really thankful for all the information that was presented, and thank you for the data. He just wanna make sure people understand, and well, first of all, his question was, is this report gonna be shared with the mayor and city staff? And once this is shared, are they aware of the impact that this has, especially related, the economic impact and employment in the area?
I think maybe I'll take that unless Nancy wants to. I'm happy
ahead,
to
Nate,
take
I'll
to
follow
take a crack. Thank you, Umberto, for your question. A huge reason why we're doing this work is to tell the story of how important the market is, because we think that, so I'll pause. Oh, I don't need to because the interpreters are doing live. Sorry. So we think that is what will help policymakers kind of, understand the value in dollars and cents, and in impact on lives, right, and the community, and we think that is helpful for potentially recruiting additional resources for next steps, and we we're really happy to help tell the story of the Berryessa Flea Market. This data also informs next steps beyond just telling the story, right? Because it helps us learning more about revenue and expenses and kind of the depth of the existing market from a business standpoint, helps us understand what kinds of opportunities we can go after and make work from a financial standpoint. So there's kind of two really big reasons why this work is so important. Nancy, what did I miss?
Thank you, Nathan. As always, you did a great job. I just wanted to add that our team takes, but in particular, I take this information and update people in the administration. Rosalind Huey, who is the Deputy Director over Community Development, and key council staff and key mayor council members. Our next opportunity to update, we have, as you may remember, we have periodic updates at the Community and Economic Development Committee. And when we begin to have proposals, which we will, then we would be able to move those to council. So there's a lot of information sharing. Our goal is to keep people updated and then prime the pump for decisions. But I just wanted to reiterate that I think you knew and we knew, or mostly knew, the very big numbers of jobs, the very big impacts on lives. And so it is important and gratifying to see that the data is coming in as we anticipated, and we'll have a good story to share with decision makers and potentially with other funding sources.
Thank you. I want to try really hard to get us out on time. So I think if everyone can keep your questions brief, and there might be some questions that we just have to collect, or comments that we have to collect and answer later. But feel free to put your questions in the chat, or we might have to, in a minute, just switch to collecting questions. But Israel, why don't you ask your question next?
¿Puedo hablar?
Go ahead.
Monday.
Mi nombre es
Sí,
Israel
Israel.
García y de su recopilación de datos está bien, pero en la parte donde hablan de los clientes del 70% que viene de otros condados, no vi ningún dato que hablara sobre los clientes locales de la ciudad de San José. Y eso también nos ayudaría para entender por qué ya no visitan la pulga de Berryessa. Pero no sé si no entrevistaron gente de aquí del área de San José, pero ese dato no aparece ahí en su investigación. Gracias.
Gracias, Israel. Yo voy a traducir por usted. Israel is asking if he appreciates the data from the 70% of customers that come from other counties. He's just wondering if there was any efforts to survey local San Jose customers and kind of what is the reason they stopped going to the market?
So Dina, is it okay if I take
Please
crack at
do.
that?
Yeah.
I worked on our customer survey portion of this project. And when we surveyed at the market, you know, the majority of people we spoke to were locals, you know, people who lived in the area, in the San Jose area, although there were quite a few who also kind of come in from sort of 30 miles or more, right? So although 70% are near San Jose, you know, there are significant numbers who travel significant distances to come to the market. You know, the people we spoke to who were customers were customers, right? And so they were people who are still coming to the market. So I don't know that we have you know, a ton of information about why people might be coming less, if they are coming less, you know, and kind of what's behind that. But what we did find is that those customers who are coming are really loyal flea market customers, and this is part of their lives, and you know, they are diehard flea customers, right? So I think, you know, just the visit traffic trends is something we're, you know, still trying to understand. We did see that big boost of visit traffic as COVID kind of went more into the rearview mirror, only to get sort of hammered by the rains, right? And so I think that was a big reason more recently why visit traffic has been declining. I'm sorry I don't have more to share for you.
Okay, thanks. Just so I can make sure I'm managing time. I'm not going to call on people from the audience yet, but I just want to know if you're a member of the audience, not a advisory group member, can you also raise your hand so I know how much time to save? Because I want to adjust the time accordingly. Alessandro, I see you. And then other people, feel free to raise your hand. We're going to do Marion, then Pat, then we might have to let's do Marion, and then depending on how many members of the audience want to talk, we might just have to collect questions after that. Mariana, sorry.
Thank you. Well, my question kind of got lost with all the other questions. But I would just say that it is a pretty big, long presentation, and in the future we can have a little bit more of an advanced notice to review it just as the advisory board. I don't think the information is misleading or off, but I do think that because we didn't reach a lot of customers and vendors, that's why it's a misleading part. I would say with Adolfo's comment, one of the reasons why foot traffic was a lot in 2021 and since 2007 is for a very long time, the market operators have not done any media or any social media. And at that point, the news was out that the flea market was closing or the flea market was about to close. So a lot of community members wanted to go to the market and wanted to enjoy it before it closed because that's what everybody thought. So I don't think it is misleading. I just think it is a lot for us to, I think we would have be good to do a little of the slides, ask us questions, and then continue more with the slides, because I don't even remember what the first slide was about. So I don't think it's misleading. Something I do want to say about, I think it's really important for every vendor to acknowledge that if the flea market is the top 50 business owners at the market, it shows a lot of the power that the vendors have. And I also want to know if you guys included in that of customers or wasn't employees, that a lot of the vendors do also get our supplies from LA or even from Mexico, which that is also a moneymaker. And also because we're buying from those wholesales, they're also being able to make money. So that's a way of also flea market vendors making even more, of generating more businesses and creating more employees. So in my opinion, if we even brought it up, the flea market vendors would be up maybe the 40 and not the 50. So I think I have a lot of questions. It is a lot of information. So maybe if we can look back after this meeting, all the advisory board could look at the slides more and probably email you more of our questions, because I do have some with every slide. Just also with Dina's comment, you did say that you went to every stand at the flea market. So does the Stellano know how many stands are exactly at the flea market? Because we keep hearing there's only 450 stands. Did your study or your counting contradict that from the owner's wording? Because in my opinion, there's a lot more stands, and I want this study to acknowledge how many actually vendors are there. So I did say a lot of questions. I hope you captured it all. And if you didn't, I could definitely rephrase my questions for you.
We're also recording, so if we missed anything, we're going to go back and we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up on the recording. Okay, we're there. And then, so I heard the request, a couple of requests. So make sure capture those, that we send the slides afterwards, and that people can email questions or comments afterwards. That's great. Happy to do that. Ideally, next time, if we can get it out ahead of time, get it out ahead of time. And then a specific data question. Let's save, I'm going to, at this point, to make sure we end on time, we're just going to collect questions and we're not going to answer them. Or if we can, we'll answer them in chat, but we'll answer them in a follow-up email. But I do want to make sure we're running on time. Okay. Pat, Olga, and Maggie, in that order, do you want to just ask your question or make your comment relatively briefly, and then we'll collect them in answer afterwards? So it's Pat first, and then Olga, and then Maggie. Do you need help unmuting? Let's see if I can. Pat, while you take a second to figure out how to unmute, why don't we hear from Olga? And you can always type your questions for sure, if that's helpful. Olga?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
We're good, go ahead.
Okay, so what I was wondering, as you know, California and Silicon Valley famous with a lot of startups companies, and that's created hub for Silicon Valley famous all over the world. In a lot of countries like Russia and European countries, France, Italy, try to actually follow up the example. So I was wondering if City of San Jose, and with help of vendors, advisory group, and whoever, maybe create hub for small businesses and start thinking in that area as well, so we can show the whole world that it's possible to save small businesses and help them. Because I think City on the right track by providing help and 0% loans for the vendors, and also all kinds of other training, which is good in the right perspective for small businesses. So maybe something to help businesses and to show others how we can help small businesses. That's what I was hoping to see.
Jump
Thank
in
you.
there, just for a quick second. Olga, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. So you said a lot of good things there. First things first is to us to, in my mind, and this is just a discussion point, for us to keep focused on alternative sites for the flea market. I also, you struck a good chord with me because we do have for you Mission Asset Fund, and I encourage all of the people on the call to check them out and hopefully work with them because they are providing 0% interest loans and even grants in some instances. So please, let's take advantage of MAF. Then we want to know your experience, because if it's possible, if they do a great job for the small businesses at La Pulga, then perhaps there's a way we can work to expand those services. And in the future, Olga, some of the other things that you've said about expanding resources for small business, that is something that is the mission of several organizations, particularly Office of Economic Development.
I think what would be also good that we already have experience with small businesses at the flea market. I'm only there maybe 7 years, but I'm learning a lot as I go. Not easy, I can tell you, but it's a quite interesting experience. At the same time, use that experience and start create from those businesses something go to the future. And not only 0% loans, grants would be nice to find, because it's really tough time right now. As you can see, big businesses disappearing, filing for bankruptcies, and it's easier for them to forget millions of dollars of loans they got. Small business
Olga,
didn't
I'm
get.
so sorry to interrupt you. All of the things you're saying are great, but I just want to thank you for your comments, and then let's stay tight to the agenda for the evening, because clearly we have a ton to get through.
Yeah. So in order, thank you. I appreciate that. So in order to get through everything, feel free to write any comments in the chat. Lily and others who have written your comments, thank you. And we're going to go real quickly, Pat, and then Maggie. If you can just give us a brief comment, and then we're happy to follow up later if we have more to say.
Okay, can you hear me? First of all,
Yes, you're good.
All right. I don't know if many of you are aware of it, but I was the president of the California Swap Meet Association for about 12 years. Just recently gave up that title. Anyhow, very familiar with the trends that were going on statewide. Looking at your graphs, and I wish I could, get that pulled up on my my desktop here again, but I can't. Anyhow, the graphs seem to be showing that it's really weather driven. But I wanted to point out one thing, and I'm not sure exactly who said it. Something to the effect that the non-flea market vending functions were not all that important. I'm paraphrasing that. But we have found that is the only thing that's kind of saved our bacon, is that family outing, and it's very important to get people there as a family. Whereas it's not so much about the shopping as far as getting the return customer week after week after week. The other thing I wanted to draw a parallel on was the price of gas. If you look at the price of gas and the upticks and downticks, I'm sure they'll mirror each other. And the other thing I had a question on was the actual people count. I don't recall anybody ever checking with the office to find out how many cars we parked, or how they went about establishing how many people were out at the flea market on any given weekend. So if you could fill me in on some of that, it would help out.
Thank you. So we're just gonna finish collecting comments now, and we'll follow up with those. And maybe if you can help share those, any additional numbers about visitor counts that you have, that would be great. Maggie, you're the last AG member to go.
Thank you so much, everybody. I just wanted to, one quick comment and then a few questions that can be answered later. The comment is that it's a little bit unfortunate that we actually had to use a lot of money and resources to conduct a study to tell the story of the vendors when the results of this study have been basically everything that the vendors have already been saying at all of these multiple meetings. But I do understand that the city does require data. So now we have the data. But to piggyback off of what Pat was saying on the data, if the board could at one point get the actual data as far as the number of people that actually responded and their individual responses. I know that has not been provided yet, but it maybe can be at a later time. Additionally, the cost of what was spent on the collection of this data, and then additional resources that are still needed to conclude the data collection and how much that's going to be costing the vendors. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then we're going to switch to public comments. Thank you everyone from the public from joining. We're going to, just for the interest of keeping it moving, we're just going to do 2 minutes each. Christy, if you look, she's going to have a 2-minute timer on her face or on her picture. And then we're just gonna ask you politely to stop and then mute and move on, just for the sake of getting everyone out of here on time. Alexander, do you want to kick us off? Or I should say the same rules. Remember that the group agreements and other things like that. But yeah, Alexander, why don't you start? Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Can I ask a question? Do you see my screen?
No, we're still on the advisory group discussion Q&A.
Do you see a timer on my face?
Yes.
Yes, I can see the timer.
We move to you if you would highlight you. Yep.
All right. Well, when Alex is ready, you're not able to unmute?
Why don't we do Mario and then we'll come back to Alexander.
Oh, I think he's good.
Oh, okay.
Can you guys hear me?
We're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, how you guys doing? Good evening. You know, us, the vendors, have done some research as well. And I'm really glad that we were able to collect that important data that is very necessary to understand the transition of the well-being of the vendors. So thank you to those that collected that data, although I don't think it's that accurate. But we are working and heading to the right direction, so I appreciate it. We vendors done some data ourselves, and we see that there is currently 925 rent spaces available that currently operate at the Berryessa Flea Market. Approximately 3,600 parking spaces, and about 480 vendors that are currently operating at the Berryessa Flea Market. So yeah, I'm super excited that we're able to collect this data that is important. We, the vendors, also have done some research looking for sites, and we found the perfect location, which is a 90-acre market. Location address is 850 Singleton Road in San Jose, California, owned by the City of San Jose Environmental Management. That is a perfect location that is realistic for all vendors to be relocated together in solidarity. So I would like for the city and those that are doing the data to look into that location right there. It's 90 acres. It's a perfect location that we can all transit to. Another thing that I wanted to touch base is, was
Alexander, to interrupt, just be sure to wrap up quickly because you only have a little bit left. And then type in chat afterwards.
That's fine. But I just wanted to say that we're moving in the right direction, and I appreciate the data. We just got to tighten it up and get what is really what it is.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate you ending on time to help us keep moving. And so I heard comments about data, and I heard comments about location and alternate location. So I appreciate both of those. Mario, why don't you have 2 minutes. When you're ready, unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Perfect. Sorry, I didn't know you were addressing me. My name is pronounced Mia Crosco. I'm a young leader and a co-founder of the Youth Liberation Movement, which is a collective of youth. And I appreciate you guys' time today. And I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot to be said. And I really, I myself am outreach organizer. I would like a little more data on like how you guys went about your outreach. And maybe we could schedule a separate meeting for that conversation. And like Alex mentioned before, we do have we did our research and we do recommend the location on in San Jose for 90 acres. And I'm just new to all of this, and I would like to know when the next meeting is and what that agenda looks like. Because I was having trouble finding the agenda for this meeting. And yeah, I appreciate your guys' work, and I look forward to meeting with you guys.
Great, thank you. So the best way to stay informed about future meetings is to sign up on the website or to put your email or your text in the chat, and we'll get you added if you can't sign up yourself. And if someone could put the website to sign up, the URL to sign up in the chat, that would be helpful. Connor, we're going to have to get you at the next comment, Connie, excuse me, the next comment period. We're gonna, Mario, if you can unmute yourself, and then that'll be the last public comment for this period. There'll be a second public comment period later on. Mario, you're having audio problems. We can't hear you. Okay.
¿Puede hacer unmute?
I think that was background noise. Okay, Mario, we're gonna pick you up at the next comment period. Send us a chat if you're having problems, and we'll have another chance to do comments in a little bit. Why don't we continue? Nate, are you?
I think Nate's going to introduce David next.
Aló.
Oh, okay, Mario, we got you. Let's do your comment.
Aló, soy Mario.
Mario,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Monday.
Buenas noches. Soy vendedor de la Berryessa Flea Market, miembro de la asociación, y he escuchado todo el informe muy preciso. Aún falta algunos detalles, ¿no? Pero es obvio. Por ejemplo, en que no solamente asisten clientes de aquí del área de la bahía o locales, sino que también llegan clientes de otros estados, ¿no? Que son parte importante, que son muy buenos clientes, buenos compradores, ¿no? Y que se van impresionados de la variedad, de la pulga, del flea market, lo que pueden encontrar, y el esparcimiento que disfruta, se ve que disfruta la familia, la gente, ¿no? Es un lugar grande y pues me da mucho gusto de ser parte de ello, ¿no? Y pues que uno también tiene una fuente de trabajo y con esta ciertamente una incertidumbre que nos toca llegar en el tiempo venidero, es que quisiéramos que nos ayuden a buscar solución, encontrar un flea market, un espacio adecuado, igual o un poco más grande tal vez, ¿no? Que creo que los 5 acres que nos han destinado es insuficiente. Eso es todo, muchas gracias.
Gracias. Does someone want to translate that, at least at a high level?
So pretty much he's saying he's really glad to be part of the flea market, and he understands that a lot of people even come from out of state to shop at the flea market. So he is just, it's mainly a comment. He's just it's hopeful that we can potentially find a new site to relocate, so we can see another vendors and continue working.
And Nate, why don't you take it from here? Thank you. Thanks for that comment. Why don't you take it from here?
All right. Thank you so much. Super great questions, everybody. I really appreciate every one of them. And I think we'll have some good follow-up to do for y'all. So I am going to be introducing David Greensfelder. David is our real estate consultant who is working with us to explore potential relocation opportunities for a market. David is a founder and managing principal of Greensfelder Real Estate Strategy. David and his company help clients find locations for their businesses, analyze market trends and opportunities. And David works with many cities in California and across the country in developing economic strategies and plans to boost their economies. David has also managed real estate for retail companies, including Long's Drugs, Community Foods Market, CVS, and many, many others. David has a long history of working on retail projects in the San Jose area and throughout the Bay Area. And I've known David for a long time, and he's a great expert on these sorts of topics. So with that, I am going to turn things over to David.
Well, thanks, Nathan. I really appreciate it. And it's really nice to be here with all of you this evening. If we could go to the next slide. I'm going to be really brief because you're going to probably hear from me a lot more at the next meeting that we have. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of framing for what we're doing now and what you might expect at the next meeting. One of the things that I'm spending a lot of time working on is looking for alternative sites. And so first it's seeing if there are any that are feasible, and then also evaluating what the strengths and weaknesses are of the various sites that we do identify. So if you could go to the next slide. There we go. So what we're doing, I want to describe as really an iterative process, meaning that it doesn't necessarily start, at A and go straight through to Z. It's one of those things where we begin looking at things, we learn, that causes us to refine how we're looking. And so, for example, one of the things that we're working on is trying to determine spatial needs. So we know how many, we know how big the current market is in terms of acres. Alexandro gave you a number of data points. I only counted 3,575 stalls, Alexandro, but I think we were pretty close. We're in the same ballpark for parking stalls. And then trying to use that to translate into what the underlying economics are. So what do I mean by economics? I mean that if we're going to use land somewhere, there may be a cost for that land depending on who owns it and what it's being used for. And then there are a number of different criteria, and Dina explained some of those earlier. There are both, what I would call location criteria or location attributes. So it's where the actual site is located. So for example, where Berryessa Flea Market is located and its proximity to transportation and freeways and those sorts of things. And then information about the site itself. So we want to take the sites that we ultimately narrow down to and evaluate them against all of these different criteria. And then our next meeting, we're looking forward to discussing the results of all this work with you. If you could go to the next slide. There are a lot of pieces that we need to take into account. And some of them are obvious, like enough size to support as many vendors as possible. But then there's some that are a little bit more nuanced that you don't necessarily think about until you're until you're sort of faced with them. So it's getting cars in and out, getting trucks in and out. And if you've ever bought something large at a flea market, it's being able to get your car or truck in so that you can load what you've bought. Food and concession, other amenities or activities such as music, and of course, enough parking, because a lot of people come to the flea market in their cars. If you go to the next slide. One thing that I really wanted to make a point about is that, right now, the family that owns the land also operates the market, and then they also operate some of the businesses in the market. And that's not typical from of what we see at other markets. So the point that I wanted to make was really the relationship between vendors who are trying to sell things to the public, and then the vendors pay rent to the operator of the market. And then the operator of the market, of course, operates the market, makes sure that there is parking, manages renting out stalls to vendors. But then one of their expenses is paying rent to the owner of the land. And then the owner of the land, the rent that they get is their return on their investment, which is that they bought the land. They invested money in the land, and they want to get a return on it after they pay their mortgage and property taxes and things like that. So we created this chart to try to show the relationships of the different parties in more typical flea markets and swap meets. There are a number of criteria. Dina went over them. Oh, go ahead, go to the next one. Thanks. You were perfect timing before. And she went over them, and I'll just go through them very quickly. The location, the proximity to the overall customer base, the location in relation to transportation network, whether it's public transportation or freeways or primary arterials, that sort of infrastructure. Those are all the things, the sorts of things that we're looking at when we think about the location of a potential market. But then when we're looking at a specific site, things that we're looking at are the ability to control the site, the visibility. Can you see it? And can you put signage up that somebody can see? Can you actually circulate in the site? So in other words, can you get cars into the site and into parking and deliveries, and then people picking up purchases that they've made? We talked about that. We want to make sure that there's parking. We need to make sure that there are utilities. You need electricity, for example. If you're going to have permanent restrooms instead of portable porta potties, then you need access to water and sewer. And if you just flip to the next slide, some other facility kinds of attributes, the size, what are the existing uses, how frequently could the market operate? At the Capitol Flea Market, It doesn't operate on as many days as the Berryessa Flea Market, but that site's also used as a drive-in movie theater. So it's used for multiple things. And likewise, is there the potential to put permanent stalls and to have on-site storage, or would it all be temporary, which is the case with many flea markets, where everybody comes in, sets up tents, sets up their business, and then at the end of the day takes it all down and takes it all away. And the ability to incorporate amenities. And then finally, we need to think about time and costs, what sort of regulatory approvals are required from the city. Are there environmental issues or historic issues, that sort of thing. So if you go to the next slide. I think this is it for my part.
Right.
You'll
Yeah.
hear a lot more from me next time, and if
So-
there are any questions I can help with, I'm happy to.
Thank you, David. And actually, so I'm going to take it from here, and I have a couple just kind of closing comments before we get to the discussion portion around this.
And then Nathan, let me just
Yeah.
jump in. I do want to, after you make your comments, I
Okay.
do just want to jump in and have a little bit of response to some of the items in the
Okay.
chat.
Awesome. Love it. That's very cool. All right. So, so David, thank you for giving us just a little sneak peek at like how you're doing your work. What I want to talk about now is sort of next steps. So as was mentioned, we as a team are working with David and Dina to complete this assessment work, including exploring possible locations, assessing the criteria that David went over, and determining the feasibility of establishing a new market at some of these sites. And that's what we're going to come back and discuss with you, our draft findings at the next meeting, right? So nothing will be sort of set in stone. The whole goal is to work through this with the advisory group and the community. At that point, we'll also begin discussing the next stage of potential planning work. So what are the actions needed to get a new market up and running, assuming we can find a potential location. So the focus of the next steps will depend on the results of the alternative site assessment, either a site being identified as holding the most promise, and of course that potential the 5 acre urban market area on the Berryessa site. Next slide, please. This is just sharing with you sort of some of the potential actions that would follow. And so it's important to recognize that establishing a new market would be a multi-year process with multiple steps. And this list is just giving you a little flavor at what we'd need to work on. So for example, even after securing a site, design and engineering would be required to develop a site into a new market, which takes time. Securing permits can take a year or more, depending on the process and permits required. And so we just want to be clear with the team that this is not a quick process. Go ahead and take us to the next slide, please. So again, after narrowing down the potential sites and diving deeper into what would be needed to make a market come to fruition, we can then discuss, how the transition fund could be utilized to make progress on that vision. And we will do this work over the next few advisory group meetings with you. And we just want to be clear that we don't know how this effort will turn out. There are no givens here. The city team will be doing our part, but this really was going to take a full village. And we recognize and truly appreciate the goal to keep all the small businesses together in one place. Even as we also recognize it will be very difficult to find that, perfect site where that can happen. in a reasonable amount of time. And so we are trying to help find viable solutions for as many vendors as possible with you. And this is part of our overall strategy to pursue a range of solutions. And so the last thing is just, you saw this earlier on the next slide, Christy and team, is just a reminder about the range of possible opportunities to be considered. Obviously, that top of that list is exploring all potential alternative sites, but also looking at some of those other ways to support the vendor community in this transitional time. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our team.
Great.
For the discussion. Thank you.
Wait, Josh, real quick, Nancy's gonna jump in.
Hi,
Okay.
thank
Sorry,
you.
Nancy.
No problem at all. Thank you for your comments. Nathan, can you go back 2 slides? I think it'll be a good reference slide just to have up. Back one more. There, that's good. So I think it's exciting because I think we have some folks who may not have been to maybe more than 1 or 2 meetings. So I wanted to go back and pull a bit of history because this is a lot of information. Totally agree. We want to recognize that the conversations can't be done in one meeting, right? These are things that will take a lot of thinking together to come to fruition, right? To a fruitful outcome. So I just want to do a quick reminder that those of us who love the Pulga, is everybody on this call, definitely the small businesses at the market, friends of the market, the consultants we have and staff very much are in this because we have a passion to see a good outcome. The way this got done, I will be the first to admit, in 2007, I think Chris Lepe was in the discussion or in the fight at the time, and I saw Chris on before, but it's unfortunate that the main decision about deciding a new use happened in 2007. And the 2007 council made a set of decisions that frankly would be very different now. Even back to 2021, when this was heard for a general plan amendment at the city's request, the owners were coming back to fulfill the city's obligation. So we missed a big opportunity in 2007, and that is when the city council had leverage, quite frankly, over Pat and Eric were, I think, on the call at least earlier. In 2021, when this came back to council, the council members with the Roberto and the Business Vendor Association worked hard to draw a lot of public attention. And through those efforts, through the BFVA, as well as council members Cohn and Raul Perales and Magdalena Carrasco, et cetera, were able to work with the property owners who do, in my view, understand the importance, and they put on the table $5 million. The city put on the table the additional 2.5, and there were other requirements in that approval in 2021. I just wanted, because part of the conversation in the chat was the thought that maybe we had anticipated there could be a home for all of the vendors on the 5 acres. We honestly never thought that. It was just an opportunity to include perhaps, and no one knows if it's really feasible, to do a multi-story building that could get a good number of the vendors. We just lost the lights here, sorry. What was put in place at the time the council took the amended general plan process was to say that not the bums, but the first developer of market rate housing would develop a plan for the 5 acres with this committee, with the vendor committee. There is no funding for it. So we would have to think through if we can create a good plan for, which I'm sure that we'll be able to, what makes sense to have there and how do we fund it? Those questions remain unanswered. So this is part of the work. We'll dig in and do hard, good work together. The other piece of information that was mentioned was the Singleton site. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a few people on the call about the Singleton site. And it is definitely in our thoughts and our analysis together to see if we can make that work. That is probably the only site that I know of right now in San Jose where we could keep everybody together, but it's far from a given. And let me just explain why. The Singleton site was a household hazmat, hazardous materials landfill. The site has been closed, meaning as a passive site for no activities, remediation and stockpiling of dirt, et cetera, protections, mitigations went into place to be left as it is. If we were going to add the flea market, the La Pulga, there's just a whole heck of a lot of work of environmental analysis and hazmat mitigation to make sure it was safe for people to spend 8 hours a day on for a while. And there's particular difficulties. That process goes through a number of state agencies, as well as landfills are difficult to get new uses on. For example, landfills are difficult to bring utilities through. Basically, you have compacted dirt and you're putting in electricity or gas and water. And methane, which is in the site, is explosive. So you need to be really careful. I'm only laughing because, you know, it's one of those things. I don't at all say it's funny, but you really got to think through the infrastructure to make sure it's safe. Water is very difficult because you can't have water streaming through the site where if there's hazardous materials that carries those hazardous materials onto adjacent sites. So I'm not saying this isn't doable. I'm saying there's a heck of a lot to think about if this site could be made to be a home for the vendors. And that's why we all are aiming to do all we can to come to a good outcome. And at the same time, personally, I feel very responsible for not promising something that we can't deliver. So we want to work together to see what it is that we can do together. And I'm very, appreciative of the comments about the value of the 1,000 jobs and the difficulty for people to migrate. Entrepreneurship is something we care about deeply, and that folks are elderly, et cetera. So it is by all means understood. We, at the moment, don't have the ability to make promises, but very much understand what you're saying and will continue to be in this together to do our best to come to a good outcome. I know Barry was going to take over.
Thank you, Nancy. I think that was really helpful information. We had the best of plans of getting everyone out on time. I think we'll probably end up running a few minutes late. If you need to leave, by all means leave, follow up by email, phone, put your comments in text, whatever you need to do to make yourself be heard. But we'll probably plan on going a few minutes late because there are a lot of people who have comments. I just want to acknowledge a little more what we're seeing in the comments, which is the importance of not dividing the community and keeping this group of people who have been together many years together. And that means finding enough acres. Also, a couple of comments about the cultural importance of the market and being sensitive to that, and even sensitive about future opportunities like job training. Think about people's English level, whether or not they have papers, whatever they need, that the services offered are relevant to them, and just the importance for the community. I'm going to start with, see if there's anyone who, I think all the AG members have spoken. So I will.
I think there are a few AG members who have their hands up, right?
Oh yeah, I was seeing if anyone hadn't spoken in round one.
Okay.
And I was going to start.
Sorry,
them.
Josh.
Yeah. But I'm going to go Maggie, Roberto, and Mariana, and then I'll make sure I'll pick up any others after that. Okay, Maggie, why don't you start?
So just a comment. Actually, I guess I'll start with a question. So going back to the being realistic and false promises part, I wanted to get clarification as far as the 5 acres are concerned, because I keep seeing in the comments and, maybe a misconception that everyone's supposed to fit there. But when I look at the actual tentative map that is provided by the City of San Jose, as far as the actual building of the locations and the sites and the lots, I believe it went from 7 lots on the property to 19 lots on the property, all used for different designations, one of them being the public market, which is the 5 acres. However, it's my understanding that there is no legal clause that is included in that deal that says that it has to be used for us or that it has to be used as a public market. So can we just get more clarification on that so that there's no misunderstanding from the public and from the vendors themselves? Because it seems like some people think that some of us want to go there and some not, and some people aren't going to get a space or whatnot. But realistically, it doesn't actually have to be used under those conditions because it's not legally written into the contract. So we might want to focus our efforts on an alternate location.
Right. Thanks, Maggie. Let's see if we have time for a brief comment about that, because I think this is on a lot of people's minds. Does someone from the city want to?
We'll take it, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. Maggie, so appreciate what you said. The good part is it went into the development plan as an urban market. So it preserves, at this moment, it preserves the opportunity for 5 acres of urban market to happen there. It's on the next developer of market rate housing to help think through a plan, and then the rest of us to think through, are there opportunities to finance that? So to your point, it's not legally written, it must have actually no plans that the city approves. We can't force any use to happen. We can say if something goes forward, it must be consistent with the land use designation. And over time, people suggest different land use designations. In this instance, Maggie, we will have the opportunity through the next developer and this committee and staff to try to make that work and get that financed. So it's a real opportunity, but again, it's going to take, like every single other development proposal, it's going to take some careful thinking and work.
Right. And Nancy, I think you said earlier that it wasn't, no one had promised or thought that all of the vendors would be able to relocate in those 5 acres, right? It's just not realistic.
That's correct. It was a notion of having a presence, an enduring presence on site, and be able to take advantage of the customers from a new development as well as its proximity to BART.
Great. Okay, let's keep going. Roberto.
Hi, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry for having my camera off. My Wi-Fi is acting up, but just kind of on that same vein that Maggie was talking about regarding the 5 acres and it not being guaranteed. what are the possibilities of the city once the site is sold to a developer to give you their tax incentives to take ownership of those 5 acres, and that way see a true commitment from the city of San Jose to build out those 5 acres for the current vendors. So just thinking that throughout this process as well, and making it, a topic of discussion between the advisory board, just so that we have more of a pathway to those 5 acres actually coming to fruition for vendors. And of course, on the alternate sites, just if we could also talk about what sites are being considered together as an advisory group, I think would also be beneficial. So I would just recommend that as well.
Roberto, let me just say, the group of us are thinking about what may be possible in terms of a mechanism for the city to take ownership. Any of those opportunities, same thing, will take a bunch of work. I think there are some potential paths, and as we move forward in our discussions together, we will most definitely talk about that. And those are decisions that the council would definitely have to approve.
Okay. Great, thanks. Mariana.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you. My comment might be a little bit different than a lot of the comments you have heard, just because of what I've heard from a lot of the vendors. Since the beginning of this process, nothing was promised. The city told us from the very beginning they couldn't do anything, but us as the association, the BFBA, we knew that with organizing and creating a union between the vendors, something was going to be possible. And we still have the same mentality going here. If we know that this, especially Maggie, if we know that no one is going to be, the 5 acres is not going to be for everybody. That's why we can continue to organize with vendors to something that has been a little bit hard, because the city never knew how many vendors were actually at the market. At the beginning of this process, the owners always told the city there's only 400. So when we were looking for, the city was thinking about the market, they only made it so small because at the end of the day, they didn't have the right number of how many vendors were at the market. Now that we know, and the city knows that there's more than 400, we can continue to advocate that we need fully relocation. And the promise is not going to come from the city, and we always knew that, but that's going to come from the vendors as continue to advocate, but as one voice, not as 3 or 2, 4 voices. So going back to relocation is we knew was never promised, but we know that if we organize as a true union as vendors, not like this little group, but this little group, one come to one group and go one voice to the city, will be very, very impactful. That was just honestly my comment. It's not anything about the city, truly, because it is to the vendors. If we want relocation, is up creating accountability and pressure with the city for not only the city, but also investors and the property owners for that information to be given. Because once a new market is in place, we still need to make sure that the city has the contact of every vendor so they know that this relocation is going to happen. So yeah, I just keep seeing the chat a lot. So I would just leave my comment at that of at the beginning, nothing of this was promised, but 100 vendors organized and went to the city in their March. And I truly believe if we had 200 or 300, that the 5 acres would be so much more, and not we're in a point where we could organize vendors in a way of empowering them and truly letting them know what this process is. But that's not going to happen if we continue to just be. Alejandro, I wish you would contact us and especially about the study. And Maggie, we have your contact. I hope after this meeting we can continue that bridge, because there's a lot of information that Are the BFA members? No, because we have regular meetings with them, and I hope you also get this information. And I see that I have Israel that put his hand up, so I will pass it to him.
Thank you,
Because he's part
Mariana.
of the board.
Thank you, Mariana. Thanks for your comments now, and thanks for your strong voice and leadership throughout. Okay, well, we're going to finish up advisory group members, and then we'll go to the public, and we'll stay a little late if we need to. If you need to leave at 8:30, then you can. Well, I apologize, and we can catch it in the recording later. Israel, of course, go ahead.
Buenas noches a todos. Bueno, mi pregunta es la siguiente. ¿Qué va a pasar si el proceso de desarrollo de los 5 acres es a largo plazo? ¿A dónde van a llevar los vendedores sus negocios para continuar con ellos?
Israel is asking if, so what happened if the 5 acres is not developed? What will happen to the vendors then?
So those two things are not necessarily linked. We are very much interested in working together to have the 5 acres be something as a market for the vendors, but that is not in any way taking away from our opportunity to look at another site for all or alternatives for other hopefully larger groupings of vendors.
Okay, so it's a both and situation, not an either or. I think that's all of the advisory group members. Let's wrap it up with comments from the public. Originally, we were going to limit it to one time per person, but I think there's not that many public comments, so why don't we open it? I don't see Connie here anymore. So we'll go. I'm going to go. Alexandra, I'm going to do the new people first, and then I'm going to pick you up. Nubia, do you want to unmute yourself? And we might do, if we can try and do 1 minute, that would be great, just for those who need to get out on time. Nubia, are you able to unmute yourself? Or do we need to invite you to unmute yourself? There we go. I can't hear you though. It looks like you're unmuted.
Ah, ok. Perdón. ¿Ahora sí me escucha?
Está bien.
¿Aló?
Hi, it's good. Hello. Yes, está bien.
Sí. Ok. Bueno, lo que con respecto a los 5 acres, algo que quisiera saber es de qué depende para que los vendedores que se queden ahí estén, ¿no? Cuando ya se arregle lo de los 5 acres. ¿De qué depende? Porque yo no he sabido para nada qué es lo que hay que hacer para estar ahí. O para, ¿no? Porque el resto de los vendedores se van, o nos vamos. Pero sí quisiera saber qué reglamento hay, sobre todo Pat, que está aquí, que él nos aclarara eso, ¿no es cierto? Sería bueno saberlo. O yo no sé si la ciudad lo sepa.
So her question is about the 5 acres again. She's asking what will be the criteria to be selected to sell there from all the vendors.
Just mentioning that first we have to, that's a great question down the line. Thank you very much for the question. First, we have to see what is possible, what could be designed that would be done in conjunction with this committee. And then we have to see if there's a way to fund it. Those key pieces have to be thought through and answered and all positively done before we get to see how we think through who would be on site.
Okay, so the answer to be determined as we get closer, further along. Alexandra, you're going to be our last public comment, and then we're going to have a few words from the city, and then we'll send everyone back on their way.
All right, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak again. I just first and foremost want to say that I feel that it's very irresponsible that we are doing and inappropriate that we're doing a Zoom call instead of actual in person. You know, so it's very important because there's so many livelihoods that are at stake here, and it should be in the best interest of the city for the vendors to be there in person. It's an important subject. With that being said, I also feel that it's very irresponsible for the city of San Jose to keep promoting and pushing the agenda of a 5-acre urban market when it doesn't have enough space to relocate anybody. So we need to start focusing our funds and our resources that we do have, that we are limited to finding a solution that is in the well-being of all the livelihoods that are at the Berryessa Flea Market. Approximately 480 vendors, right? Approximately 500 vendors. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, there's people that are, a 5-acre urban market will leave potential people to be unemployed, absolutely, without a doubt, unemployed, and potentially becoming homeless. There's another thing that I kind of wanted to just mention real fast. I'm gonna be real short about it. San Jose had a budget of $5.2 billion, and us vendors, this was for the spending of 2023, 2024 for the city of San Jose, and us vendors weren't even on the agenda. I was actually one of the only people that attended City Hall to speak on behalf of 500 vendors. And we talk about that we want to find the solution and find keys. That would have been a big step because we are in urgency and time is clicking. We don't know when the flea market is going to close. We can get a notice this October. And the $5.2 billion that is on the spending budget of San Jose, us vendors, our livelihoods should have been on the agenda. And you guys absolutely dropped the ball on that.
Let me just step in on time here and speak to what you're speaking about, because I appreciate very much your coming to in person to meetings. It's a big commitment. We did consult with the advisory group committee, and what we found through the COVID and through continuing time at city council, that it gets a larger group of people if we allow for a mix of in-person and virtual meetings. There are people who can't physically drive or make it to the meetings. So that's what we discussed with the advisory committee, and their shared thought that we do a mix of in-person and virtual so that we give as much opportunity to participate. And I think you see tonight, we do have some folks that we didn't have before. And then just it's very fair that Alex would say what he says, but there's some inaccuracies. The $5.2 billion budget, of that, the council has a say-so over $1.6 billion. The rest of it is all specific funding by sources of income. For example, anything to do with the regional waste facility, collection of garbage fees, etc. The city can't touch that. I mean, eventually when the contracts are up, they can be redecided. So that's why I say only 1.6 billion, not like that's not a lot of money, but 1.6 billion, but that is also spent on police and fire and parks and libraries and everything else. So really, the unfortunate situation is the city of San Jose compared to a lot of other cities is flat out poor. So it is frustrating to not have more money to provide more resource. And offline, I'd be happy to go into that. The opportunity to bring this up to council is when there is a proposal on a piece of land. We don't have anything to propose to council for current spending allocation. So it wouldn't have been in the budget at this time, but I totally appreciate your points, Alex, about the importance of 1,000 jobs and what happens to people if those jobs are endangered.
Okay, we had, I see Mariana has a question, and we had another person in chat that also said they had a question, but I think we're 10 minutes over, and we need to, we want to wrap up, and we have a final wrap up slide. But please, if
Hi,
you would
Joshua. Just a comment, Alexandra. You were not the only one that was there advocating from the vendors. We have talked with City Council, and we actually are organizing and meeting with them personally so we can find money for the vendors. So that's what I would really appreciate. Like, we need to be one movement. So instead of us giving public comment, we directly had a conversation with them and met with them. And we also have vendors meeting with them regularly so we can find a budget for them. The OED, unfortunately, they have no say and absolutely nothing to do with it. That's why we go directly with City Council. And that was my only comment, that this is not the right people to talk to. If you want to organize it, truly, you can talk to us, because that money, they did do a small business fund that we can truly organize with the city, but this would be totally separate from OEDs to find relocation and the 5 acres. But our #1 goal is relocation. But for that to happen, it's truly advocacy work. Sorry, Joshua, I did not.
Okay, no, it's fine. We can be flexible. Thank you for your comment. Okay. Yeah, so let's put in the contact information. Are you asking for the city's contact information? Let's put the city's contact information. Again, look, it's on the slide, but we can put it in. We'll distribute it also.
And Adolfo will have the closing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, so everyone, feel free to communicate or send me an email, call me. Happy to answer any questions. I know there was a lot of information shared today. We just want to give a quick overview of the next meetings. Some of the dates we're looking for will be September, October, and December for the 3 upcoming meetings of 2023. We hope to see you there so we can continue this discussion. And again, feel free to contact me if you have any questions, or if you want to have a more detailed conversation about the flea market and transition.
And if it's okay, I see our specific request for the facilitators. I mean, obviously, we coordinate closely with the city, but I'm going to just put our contact information in there as well. Just give me a second to type it. I mean, it makes more sense to go directly to the city because they're the ones in charge. But if for some reason you feel the need to go straight to us, we'll put our information in there.
Thank you so much, Josh. All right.
I think that's
Thank
it.
you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for bearing with us a few minutes late. Thanks for showing up. Please sign up if you haven't signed up. Please be in contact, and we'll talk with you next time.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank
advisory
you.
group.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias por su tiempo.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Nathan. The recording will be available on the website, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks.
I hope you have a good weekend.